Welcome to Global Byte. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The foundations of presidential power are being tested in America's courtrooms, where the very principles of the nation are being scrutinized like never before. Each day brings new arguments, new evidence, and new questions about the reach and limits of executive authority. Landmark rulings now challenge a president determined to expand his authority, raising urgent questions about the future of democracy, the right to vote, and the humane treatment of individuals under the law. Judges and justices are weighing not just legal precedents, but the very values that define the American experiment. The world watches as these legal battles unfold, knowing their outcome will define the limits of presidential power and America's global direction. Allies and rivals alike are paying close attention, aware that the decisions made here will ripple far beyond U.S. borders. This is more than a Washington story. It affects citizens, businesses, and governments worldwide. From small towns in the Midwest to bustling capitals overseas, the consequences of these courtroom showdowns will be felt in everyday lives and international relations alike. In early 2026, the confrontation is clear. President Trump's executive orders versus an assertive judiciary determined to check that power. The stakes are high, as each side claims to defend the Constitution and the will of the people. The resulting constitutional storm over elections, trade, and immigration is a real-time test of the checks and balances envisioned by the nation's founders. The nation holds its breath as the branches of government collide in a struggle that will shape the future. How much authority can a president claim? Who controls elections? These questions, once theoretical, are now at the heart of a national reckoning. Where is the line between enforcing law and inflicting cruelty? The answers will determine not only policy, but the moral character of the nation. The answers will reshape the presidency and echo across the world for years to come, setting precedents that future leaders and generations will have to live with. The first major legal clash of the new administration erupted over voting rights, igniting fierce debate across the nation and drawing immediate attention from both supporters and critics. In March 2025, President Trump signed a sweeping executive order that imposed strict proof of citizenship requirements for all voters, banned the use of QR codes on ballots, and rejected any mail-in ballots that arrived after Election Day, regardless of postmark. The order was touted by the administration as a necessary step to restore faith in the electoral process and prevent fraud, but it immediately sent shockwaves through the political landscape. While the White House framed these measures as essential for election security, critics argued they amounted to voter suppression, disproportionately affecting marginalized communities, the elderly, students, and Americans living overseas. Protests erupted in cities nationwide, with activists warning that millions could be disenfranchised. The U.S. Constitution gives Congress and the states, not the president, primary authority over the administration of elections. Yet Trump's executive order sought to override long-standing norms and legal boundaries, raising urgent questions about the separation of powers and the limits of executive authority. Lawsuits from civil rights organizations, bipartisan election officials, and state governments were filed within days, arguing that the president was seizing powers that rightfully belonged to Congress and the states. Legal experts warned of a constitutional crisis brewing. The Department of Justice, now under Trump's leadership, prepared for a fierce legal fight, insisting these were common-sense protections to safeguard democracy. DOJ officials argued that the measures would ensure only eligible citizens could vote, but many saw this as a partisan move. The stage was set for a historic constitutional showdown. Courtrooms across the country became battlegrounds, with judges, lawyers, and activists all playing pivotal roles in determining the future of American elections. The outcome of these legal battles would not only decide the rules for upcoming elections, but also shape the very balance of power in American democracy for years to come. The administration's legal arguments began to unravel in January 2026. U.S. District Judge John Chun became the third federal judge to block Trump's election order, affirming that only Congress and the states can set election rules. Chun's ruling, echoing others, cited the founders' fear of a single executive manipulating elections. The administration appealed, but the judiciary presented a unified front against presidential overreach. Despite court orders, the administration continued to pressure states, demanding unredacted voter data and filing lawsuits, while some Republican-led states independently tightened voting rules. The White House responded defiantly, vowing to fight to the Supreme Court. Legal experts suggested the administration's strategy was less about legal victory and more about projecting power and sowing doubt in the election process. The ongoing fight threatens to undermine public confidence in democracy itself. As lower courts battled over the future of American elections, a different legal fight was brewing at the highest level. The Supreme Court, often the final arbiter in constitutional disputes, was about to make a decision that would reverberate far beyond the courtroom. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court issued a decision that significantly curbed presidential power over tariffs, drawing a clear line between executive authority and legislative oversight. The case centered on Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, a provision originally designed to protect national security but increasingly used for economic leverage. President Trump had invoked this section to impose sweeping tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, igniting global trade disputes and raising questions about the limits of presidential power. The court's ruling narrowed the definition of national security, emphasizing that not every economic concern qualifies, and restored a crucial layer of congressional oversight to the process. This decision makes it much harder for presidents to act unilaterally on trade matters, requiring them to justify their actions with clear evidence and, in many cases, seek approval from Congress. For global markets, this shift brings a new sense of stability and predictability, reducing the risk of sudden disruptive policy changes that can rattle investors and trading partners alike. Future presidents will now face greater scrutiny, forced to justify any new tariffs or seek explicit congressional approval before taking action that could impact the world economy. U.S. trading partners and domestic industries must now adapt to a more predictable, rules-based system, where the rules are set not by one person, but by a process involving many voices. The decision reaffirms Congress's primary role in regulating commerce, reminding the nation that the power to shape trade policy ultimately rests with the legislative branch. It also signals a strong judicial pushback against the rise of the so-called imperial presidency, where executive power expands, unchecked. By setting clear and enforceable limits, the court has sent a powerful message to future administrations. The executive branch is not above the Constitution, and its actions must always be grounded in law and subject to oversight. This historic ruling will shape the future of American trade policy and executive power for years to come, ensuring a more balanced and accountable system of government. The administration's policies have had real human costs, nowhere clearer than in Minnesota. Operation Metro Surge, a massive immigration raid, led to thousands of apprehensions and sparked outrage after the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens. A viral photo of 5-year-old Liam Cornell Ramos and his father being detained became a symbol of the administration's hardline tactics. Judge Fred Beery ordered their immediate release, condemning the government's actions as cruel and bereft of decency. His rebuke turned a legal case into a moral reckoning, highlighting the human consequences of executive authority. While legal battles rage in Washington, families are separated and communities live in fear. Judge Beery's order was a call for humanity in the face of bureaucratic force. The court rulings have redrawn America's political landscape. For Republicans, judicial rebukes energize Trump's base but undermine his image as a strong leader. Democrats use the rulings as proof of presidential overreach, rallying voters and building momentum for upcoming elections. Judges from both parties standing up to the executive branch lend credibility to claims of overreach. Yet, the conflict erodes public trust in both the presidency and the judiciary, deepening polarization. Federal employees are caught between loyalty to the president and their duty to uphold the Constitution, creating uncertainty and dysfunction. The court orders force agencies to navigate a treacherous path between following orders and obeying the law. The result: a government struggling to function amid escalating institutional conflict. The Supreme Court's tariff ruling has reshaped both domestic and global economies. American businesses now enjoy greater stability, able to plan without fear of sudden tariffs. Internationally, the decision signals a return to negotiation and congressional consensus, encouraging allies to re-engage in trade talks. However, U.S. industries once protected by tariffs now face renewed foreign competition, risking job losses and economic hardship in some communities. The debate over protectionism versus free trade is far from settled. Congress now has greater influence over trade policy, ensuring more voices are heard in future agreements. The process may be slower, but it promises a more balanced and sustainable approach. In the short term, the transition will create both winners and losers in the global economy. Legal experts see these court orders as a powerful reaffirmation of separated powers. Courts have consistently found that President Trump exceeded his constitutional authority based on the Constitution's text and precedent. Experts argue the administration's legal strategy is more political theater than sound law, lacking a constitutional basis for unilateral control over elections. The Supreme Court's tariff decision restores a critical check on executive power, forcing transparency and justification for trade actions. This marks a shift from personal presidential control to shared responsibility with Congress. The judiciary, from district courts to the Supreme Court, acts as a guardrail for democracy, enforcing the founders' vision. These legal battles, though contentious, show the system of checks and balances is still working. The rulings are not about partisanship, they're about preserving the rule of law. As the dust settles, America stands at a crossroads. The judiciary has drawn clear boundaries around presidential authority, but the legal battles are far from over. The administration's appeals ensure that questions about election control will continue to dominate the national conversation. The presidency is now constrained, but political conflict is likely to intensify. A president thwarted by the courts may seek new ways to exert influence, deepening national divisions. For Americans, this is a call to engagement. The stakes, fair elections, economic stability, humane treatment, are too important to ignore. Staying informed and participating in democracy is the most powerful check on government power. The future of American democracy depends not just on leaders, but on active, informed citizens. The story is still being written, and every citizen has a role in how it ends.